Today we're talking about tags. And there's a few different workflows with tags that are available via the Tiller Money Labs add-on. The first one I want to talk about is tagging transactions. This allows you to get more granular with your tracking. You have the two levels here. You have the group, which is the biggest level, or the highest umbrella, biggest umbrella, highest level, and then category within your groups. If you want to get more granular with that, you can actually tag individual transactions. So this would be like a third tier of tracking and granularity. So in order to tag transactions, you need a tags column. And the best way to do reporting on your transactions that are tagged is via the tags report that's available in the Tiller Money Labs add-on. So if you don't have this add-on already, you can get it by going to Get Add-ons and then just search for Tiller Money Labs. And then you can install it and then launch it and get it set up in your sheet. You can also find more about this on the community. All the documentation and support for these tools happens in the Tiller Money community. So you can get the link out there, but it's really easy to find if you just search for Get Add-ons, search for Tiller Money Labs. All right, so getting the tags report, that's under Add a Solution. There's a lot of solutions here for different financial workflows that you might be interested in using in your Tiller Money powered Google Sheets. This is only for Google Sheets, so you can browse what's there, but today we're focusing specifically on the tags report. So it's down here, and I can just go ahead and choose Add to Spreadsheet. And then what this is going to do is also add that tags column to my transaction sheet that's going to allow me to actually tag those transactions. And so it lets me know it was inserted. I get a link to the support page, which is the community documentation, a wiki article on how to use this. But I'm just going to go ahead and exit out of the Labs add-on for now. So here's my report, but I don't have anything tagged yet. So I can head back over to my transaction sheet, and that column is going to end up way over here to the far right. I like to just drag it over right next to my account column. I'm going to get this little warning, hey, do you know what you're doing? Yes, I do know what I'm doing. So I'm just going to say, don't show for 5 minutes and click OK. We just put that warning in there to protect the header row in the transaction sheet so you don't accidentally blow away any of the headers. So just a heads up, if you get that, don't be scared.
Heather,
and if I want
to add one thing real quick?
Sure.
I just want to say that most of our solutions and templates in Tiller Money Labs are built to sort of dynamically find the columns in the core sheets. And so generally you can do what Heather just did, drag a column over, and all the references will rebuild to find its new home.
That's a great point. Yeah, so reordering doesn't break anything. All right, so let's say I want to tag some transactions here. I have a few that are uncategorized, which is fine. I'm just going to leave that as is for now. But let's say that I want to tag this Black Dome Mountain Sports as climbing, because these were for climbing shoes. And maybe I want to be really pedantic about how I track my gear and clothing. So this one specifically was for climbing. I could actually even add multiple tags. I could say shoes if I also want to have a tag for shoes and all my shoes purchases. That's how you would add multiple tags to a transaction. So I'm just going to stick with the one there for now. I'm going to go in this Petco purchase. That was for Riley, our dog Riley. Let's say if we had multiple pets, we wanted to really finely grain track how much money was spent on certain things for certain pets. And then lastly, I'll do a demo of another way we can apply these tags in a second with these Lowe's ones. So I've got these two in place here now, and then I can just quickly run over to that tags report and get a sense for a custom date range for all my tags. How much did I spend and the count of transactions that have that tag applied? I can select a specific tag, and then I will get a sense for how much, all the transactions. So let's say I go back over here and I add another one for, let me see, there was another one I was looking at for, oh, here we go. I wanted to do this for like environmental, for example. And then maybe like, I don't know, let's just say this is also climbing, right? So I can get a sense for how this works. So then I've got a couple transactions here that are tagged climbing. It gives me the individual transaction description, date, and the amount. And then I can get a summary. Those are not categorized, so that's a good point here. So I'm not seeing anything in this because I haven't categorized those yet. So let's say that I go and I categorize these gear and clothing, and this is gear and clothing, and then back on my tags report, I'll see gear and clothing, and then I get the total, and then I get the count of 2. So that's kind of how the tags report works. Like once you get the tags in there, this is how you can get that granular reporting. The other thing I wanted to demo was how to automate the tagging a little bit with AutoCAD. So let's say that I go into my AutoCAD sheet. The cool thing about AutoCAD via the Tiller Money Feeds add-on is that you can add extra columns to the AutoCAD sheet that you want to have overridden in the transaction sheet. So right now, the only override column I have in my AutoCAD sheet is the category column. I can add another column to the right for tags, and now that is an override column because it doesn't have a suffix, right? So these are filter criterias, they have a suffix. This one has no suffix, so it's an override column. So let's say that anytime I had a transaction that contains the word Lowe's, I want it categorized as materials and supplies if the account contains business, but I also want to apply a tag. So I'm going to say that this is going to be my Etsy shop because I have an Etsy shop business. So I can go into the Tiller Money Feeds add-on, launch it, and then run AutoCAD. I think because that one is uncategorized, it should pick it up for me. So, and it should tag it. So I'll go into AutoCAD here in the Tiller Money Feeds add-on, and then I'll just hit run, and it might catch a few other ones. But mostly I'm looking for that it's going to tag this one for me, and it's going to categorize it as materials and supplies. So there we go, Etsy shop, tag, materials and supplies, because it was Lowe's and it had that business keyword in the account column. So that's a couple ways that you can get granular on the transaction level with tagging. The other level, sure, go ahead.
I just want to say, when you introduced the tags concept, you talked about them a little bit as kind of subcategories, which I think is the way a lot of people use them. I use the tags as subcategories sometimes, but one of the really powerful features of tags is that they can also span categories. So for example, you can have a vacation, let's just say at Disney World, and make a Disney World tag, and some of the transactions can be categorized as food, some of them can be categorized as airfare or travel expenses, but they can all roll up into that one Disney World tag, and you can get a total trip cost, again, that spans transactions that were categorized into different categories.
That's a great point, Randy. Definitely, and that's where this tags report comes in handy, you know, when you drill down into kind of picking one, and then, you know, you see the category here if it's categorized, or you get that sum of spending here. So for across all those categories. So great points there. So transaction level tags, we've covered that, and we've experimented with how to automate it. The other way you can use tags is actually in the category sheet. And this is helpful if you want to, you know, apply the same tag to every single instance where you've categorized that transaction with a specific category. So to do that, you can also use the Tiller Money Labs add-on. So go ahead and launch that here. And we just added this new feature literally right before this webinar on getting that column into the category sheet.
Yes, so crossing fingers.
Yeah, I did test it. So you can go into tools now and go into utilities, and there's a new utility called add column. And this is a way you can insert popular columns into various sheets in your Google Sheet. So transactions, you know, you can see the sum that are there. There's a couple for categories here. The one we're interested in right now is this categories/tags, and that just means it's going to add the tags column to your category sheet. So I'll go ahead and add column. Previously, you had to do this manually, so it's really nice to just have like a quick automated way to do it.
Well,
so now I have a, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there are some sheets that have dependencies that need some of these columns, and generally when you install the sheet using Tiller Money Labs with the add solution workflow, the columns will get added automatically, but this is a way if you want the column and you don't have that sheet, or maybe you deleted the column, you can add it back in.
Yeah, great point. The one that adds tags by default is the estimated tax solution. In this case, we're not going to explore that specific solution. And so the only other way to get it to work with the category roll-up report was to add it manually. So I was like, hey, Randy, can you add this feature? And he just like really quickly whipped it out. So that was awesome. So now I have a tags column in my category sheet. So what this allows you to do is apply a tag to the entire category. So anytime I categorize something as postage, for example, it's also going to get the business tag. And I'm also going to say tax, because these are the two kind of use cases that we have documented. And so all of these are going to be business and tax because they're for my Etsy shop business. And I want to be able to report on all of the transactions with these categories as either business or tax. And so the workflow there, if you want to do that type of reporting, is from the main menu here in the Tiller Money Labs add-on. If you go into Tools and then you go to Create Reports, the one that leverages the tags on categories is the category roll-up report. And so if you have this tags column in your category sheet, you'll see this option, filter on category tag. You don't have the tags column, you won't see the option. And so you can go back to that tools, utilities, and then add that column. But I've already got it in here. So let's say I just want to report on all the transactions. I want the transaction line item detail for all of the transactions that have categories that have the business tag. I'm also going to leave this include hide from reports categories because all these are hidden from my budget. I don't want to see those expenses on my budget, but I do want to see them in this report. And then I can choose the time range. I'm just going to choose last 12 months, and then I can generate the report here. And it's only going to include the information for the category filter that I had set up when I generated the report. So rather than seeing, all of my transactions for all my personal spending, my groceries, things like that, I'm just seeing the transaction details for those ones that are categorized with a category that is tagged as business here on the category sheet. So this is a really handy report for, especially if you have a small business. That's why I use that as an example to kind of drill down into business expenses. It's also really useful for tax time reporting. Having this other layer here, the secondary tag, if I had some other expenses like utilities, for example, that were tagged as tax, but not as business, I could use that to generate the category report and help me, give that to them and say, hey, here's all my expenses, figure out how I need to split up my utilities and what I can claim for, my small business income that's self-employed or freelance or something like that. So I think that was everything I had to demo. Randy, unless you have any other little tidbits you want to share, we can move on to Q&A.
I was just going to say, and Brad, thank you for telling me my volume was low. I'm not sure if I fixed it. I was just going to say that generally when we write tags, we're writing them without spaces. So it's just tag, comma, tag, no space in between. And honestly, I can't remember. I'd have to check if the formulas are kind of smart enough to strip off those spaces if you happen to put them in. But as a best practice, don't use spaces.
Good tip. All right, so it looks like we got a few questions. If you have a question and you haven't added it, please add it into the Q&A option there. Okay, so Noel asks, I'm using the original version of Tiller, created my Tiller sheet number 2 in 2018. Can I use labs and tags, or do I have to first convert to foundations? So that is a great question. It sounds like you're probably still using our feedbot. You haven't yet started using the Tiller Money Feeds add-on to feed the data in. Short answer is yes, you can use labs. There's likely some sheets that you're going to want to upgrade in order to take advantage of a lot of the solutions that are available in the labs add-on. The main change between the way the feedbot fed data into the spreadsheet and the core sheets is around the balance history and the way that the balances go through. And so we built the new accounts sheet, which is hidden by default in the foundation template here, leveraging account ID instead of an index. And so those are two columns that are in the balance history that are different now. And so if you find that you fire up the labs add-on and there's some solutions that are incompatible, I think it will tell you why they're incompatible. It'll say, because you already have an accounts sheet installed, and the labs add-on is really intelligent. It kind of tracks like versioning information for the sheets you have installed. And there's some good documentation out there on like how to upgrade your accounts sheet, for example, so you can take advantage of like all these solutions. But as far as just using tags, I don't think there's any reason that you wouldn't be able to add the tags column to categories and use those. Basically anything that shows as a solution that's not incompatible, you can add to your sheet. Randy may have some more insights on that as far as like if there are other dependencies.
Yeah, I was just going to say it should flag it in the bottom there, where right now you can see plus solutions at the top, and at the bottom you'll see incompatible solutions, like Heather said. Just to build on what Heather said, generally I think that because the sort of incompatibility, the thing we made simpler, honestly, in the new version of Tiller Money Feeds is the account sheet. Most likely you'll just run into issues with solutions that deal with balances. So net worth, debt, those kind of workflows that depend on the account sheet, the new format of the account sheet will be issues. But things that are working off your transaction sheet and budgeting probably won't be an issue.
Great points there. Good question, Noel. All right, Vineet, hey, I love that you always join our community webinars. He says, I love this add column feature. I've been manually adding my own columns and I'm always worried about breaking things. So that was a good, quick feature request.
Yeah, Heather just texted me about an hour before this and said, could we do something like this? And honestly, it was totally off my radar. And Heather always has really good insights of what people would be excited about. And so we kind of knocked it out in about half an hour. Hopefully awesome. it works more than once.
Yeah. And then on that note, if I manually add columns to my or my client's transactions or category sheets, will that likely break anything? You want to field that one? Does that make sense, Randy?
It shouldn't be an issue. Again, as I said earlier, the most of our, well, I think pretty much all, unless we miss something, of our templates do sort of dynamically look for columns. They look for specific column names. And so if you want them to work with our tooling, the name needs to match exactly. And that includes like an extra space on the end or something like that can make the column not be found. But generally, putting a column wherever you want and formatting it however you want, that should not be an issue. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. And it's, it's as simple really as just like inserting, you'll get this heads up, and that's just basically to protect those headers, but then you can add columns, I think it's note, and then you can move things around. Like Randy said, it won't break anything. As long as you're careful about not overwriting these pre-populated headers, really should be good. And things that our sheets leverage, yeah, they got to be spelled the right way. That's kind of the biggest thing I see in support is somebody's dashboard blew up because they like renamed categories like something else, that's the kind of issues we see. So good question though. All right, so if I want to use tags as subcategories, can I fill in just the tags in the transaction sheet and automatically have the category filled in based on the tag? So that's kind of like the reverse workflow, maybe. Does that make sense to you, Randy?
You could do that. So you're basically saying you would, instead of categorizing, you would tag, and then you would basically write probably like a VLOOKUP formula to pull the category based on the tag. I think one challenging thing about that workflow is that it's really hard to have a column that auto-generates or auto-populates data. Like I think you're suggesting in this approach with the category, it would be formula-based. But that also contains manual data. So you kind of have to choose, am I going to basically base everything off tags and never put in a category? Or am I going to go the other way around? But it's really hard to make that column, the category column, depend on both a formula when it is tagged, but then a manual entry when it isn't. So I think that would be the challenge in that workflow.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, and then looks like we have one question left. So if anybody has other questions, please get those into the Q&A and we can keep running through them. Or if this is the last one, we can wrap. So sounds like Vineet says, glad to hear I likely won't break anything. Also, you may have mentioned this, but I imagine tags could be really useful for couples to tag partner one, partner two expenses with various categories. Yeah, I think that's a great application of tags as well to help you, kind of keep track of who's spending what. Even there's different workflows you could use to leverage that in, maybe your own customized kind of budgeting setup where partner one owes this amount versus partner two. I'm sure there's lots of things you could do. You can, since it is a column in the transaction sheet, you could definitely leverage it to build your own reports, build pivot tables, things like that. We just have the one tags report, which I think could give some insights. I don't know, Randy, do you have other thoughts on that?
I think
Shared
it's a great
expenses?
application. It's perfect. It does that whole spanning category thing that we were talking about earlier in a way that's
Yeah,
really beneficial.
yeah, true. All right, Ebert asks, when importing transactions to my transaction sheet, what is the best way to format the data to match existing data, alignments, date forms at? So I'm guessing alignments, date format, sorry. You're meaning manually adding transactions to the transaction sheet. So there's actually a new-ish capability in the Labs add-on here that Randy built out, another one of those kind of like on a whim
This was
things
another one
that
of
I,
Heather's good suggestions from a few weeks ago.
um, and then I built some content around it. Under the import CSV line items, there's a lot of tools listed here, and really these are just the instructions. You can, any of these formats, if you upload a CSV and it's in the appropriate format for this tool, it knows how to ingest that format and put it into the transaction sheet and get all the formatting right, get all the alignment right, add in like, missing stuff like month based on the date column, things like that. So the one that we added was this basic CSV transactions import. And so there are instructions over on the community. I put together a video and some workflows about how you could use a Google Sheets macro to help you consistently format a CSV from your bank to match the basic format. And the reason that we kind of have that extra step is because like we can't build for every single CSV type from every single bank. A lot of times they vary in the way that they're formatted, the columns they have, the way the amounts are presented, for example. And so like this gives you a basic format and you can put everything in there, and then you can use this importer to just import the transactions if they're in this basic CSV format. The macro just makes it easy so that like every time you download from Chase, you just run it through the macro and it puts it in the right format, and then you import it here. So that's one way you could do it. Otherwise, I mean, you could use the paint formatter thing. So, if anytime you select a cell or a row, perhaps you can click this paint format, and then it's going to like format the whatever you click on next with the same format. That's one way. Otherwise, you kind of just have to go line by line or, column by column and format it the same way. That's why I really recommend having like a standard sort of like, this is the template that I use every time. And so that's kind of where I was inspired by this workflow. I don't know, Randy, if you have any other tips or tricks on that.
I think that's great.
Okay. All right. So Russell asks, is Excel on the horizon? I'm an Excel guy. Tiller Foundation in Excel. So that's an interesting question. The labs capabilities are not on the horizon right now for Excel. The foundation template, we do have a template for Excel. So if I go to the console here, sheets.tillerhq.com, under Start with Excel, under Create a Spreadsheet, let's get to that. We have this Excel template, and it's very similar to the foundation template in that it has, it has the same kind of categories layout, similar monthly budget and yearly budget. It has an accounts sheet and a balances sheet, balance history. We don't have AutoCAD capability for Excel. It doesn't have an insight sheet, but it's a pretty good foundation. We don't have feature parity with Excel on the horizon for any time soon. It's definitely something we know that folks want, and we're trying to really refine the Google Sheets platform right now, because that's where we have the most experience, the most investment right now. So we want to make it the best it can possibly be, and then I think we'll circle back around to Excel. We are doing a tiny bit of development there, but not much. But that's a great question, Russell. So It's like Vinny asked, fantastic content as always, Heather and Randy. Thanks for doing these. Also, great job building this add column feature in an hour. Yeah. Thanks, Vinny. Thanks for always joining us. Justin asks, is there a way to automatically update the balances tab sheet for a manual account, an outstanding loan based on the transactions, payments to a loan? We actually built this workflow in too, and I think this was something that somebody suggested in the community, right, Randy? This wasn't one of my like
It
harebrained
wasn't one of yours, but I think it actually came out of a webinar or something. Somebody asked, "Is
Oh
it
yeah,
possible?" It's just like this question, and about
yeah.
a month ago we built that in.
Okay,
You want to
so
demo that, Heather?
yeah, so it is possible. So first you do need to start off having a manual account, which you add in via the Tiller Money Feeds add-on here. And some of the features, you know, we get this question about like, why are the features segmented between the two add-ons? And it's really about like the Money Feeds add-on is what is most core for the experience for Tiller Money. And then Labs just kind of like, you build on top of that foundation. You build on top of the core with all these awesome features that we just rapidly release. And so we want to be really careful about the feeds add-on. We're really meticulous. We generally don't rapidly release things. We put a lot of rigor into the build, the test, the documentation, whereas with Labs, it's really rapid release. Like we just get things out there. It might break, but we can quickly fix it. And Labs, especially with the templates, gives us an easy way to like push the fix and people to get the fix. So just as far as like, why is manual accounts in the feeds add-on, not in the Labs add-on? You have to go to these two separate places. I just thought I would head that one off. So in the feeds add-on, you go to manual accounts.
Heather, I'm not sure this is going to work because it looks like you don't have a manual account. Oh, you have to
Well,
add. Okay.
yeah, so first step is you have to add one. So have this loan for mom and dad, and this will just be 1, 2, 3, and it's going to be the mom and dad institution. It is a loan, it's a liability, and let's say it's just like $2,000 or something. So I'll add that manual account. It's going to add a balance history entry, give it a manual account ID, and then it can pick it up. You know, it'll always pick it up. I can update the balance here, right? But the riddle here is that now I have to manually add these transactions to the transaction sheet for this account. So let's say I pay mom and dad back a little bit to pay off this loan. I can add manual transactions via the Labs add-on. Get that to load up.
Just a quick note, right now that that new account is showing up as an ungrouped liability because it doesn't have an override in the account sheet. If you haven't seen this yet in the account sheet, you can basically go in and apply overrides like a group. And you know, put in a loans category, you can hide things, those kind of things, and then they'll show up properly in your balances sheet.
There we go. Boom. So
That's optional.
adding a manual transaction here in the Labs add-on under Tools, and then manual transactions. I think my Zoom is hogging my Wi-Fi. So I'll add a manual transaction here, and so since it's available as a manual account, the balance history recognizes it. The Labs add-on is also set up to recognize all the accounts in balance history. So there's that loan for mom and dad. I'm going to say deposit because I'm making a payment. So I'm going to say it's a $200 payment. And then this is the feature that we just added that Randy's talking about, where we can have it update the balance in balance history. And so like payment to mom and dad. So it's going to add this transaction to my transaction sheet, but it's also going to decrease the balance. Is that right? It should be a deposit, right?
Yeah, it should be a deposit, I think.
Okay. This is what always confuses me about liability accounts. So we'll test it and we'll see. Oh, okay. Let's see here.
There it goes. It looks good.
Okay, so it decreased by $200. It updated the balance. And it added that transaction. It looks like I categorized it as MISC, $200. So there you go. That workflow is available, Justin. So,
but it's important to note that because it will only update a manual account, because if it updated a feeds account, that'd kind of just be temporary until the next the money feed subscription pulled in the next balance.
Yeah, that's a great point. We limited it only to manual accounts.
So you won't see the checkbox unless it is that type of account.
Good point. All right, looks like that's all our questions. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Yep.
Can I say two more things? One
Sure.
is I just want to say one thing I meant to say during the tags presentation is if you want to build, it's not obviously very complicated, but like I have a tags sheet that I use, kind of like the category sheet where I invent my tag names, and then I created a data validation in the tags column that references that sheet. So basically, I can add in something like a Disney World vacation or whatever in my tag sheet, and then those are available to me as so I don't have to worry am I typing them the same every time when I add them. That was just one thing I forgot to mention, and then also just wanted to give a shout out to my mom who's on the call. She became a Tiller customer like a month ago, and it's cool to see
Oh,
she's already taking advantage of the webinars.
that's awesome. Yeah, I met your mom when we went to
That's
Bainbridge.
right, we
That
had
was
Paella
fun.
together.
We did have paella together. All right, y'all. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you in a couple weeks. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Bye.